Hello, this is Frank Strochel. Welcome back to my second podcast, Stories Best Told in the Dark. In the last episode, we talked at length about a haunted apartment I lived at in New York. Today, I want to talk a little bit about an experience I had at the Advanced Development Laboratory in Cambridge, Massachusetts. This is one I called in my book, Stories Best Told in the Dark, The Third Floor Guest, Chapter 15 of the book. First, a little background. At that time, I was working for a research company in Cambridge, and we had a building, a brand new building that was just built to develop some technologies we call disruptive technologies. They didn't currently exist out there in the marketplace. And we were looking for some way to digitally capture images instead of film, which at that time there was only different types of film that you could use, including instant film, but there was no digital camera business or anything like that at the time. So we were researching CID technology, which is charge injection devices, and CCD technologies, which is charge coupled devices. And this was a research lab, a microelectronics and materials center that was used to do that research. And we did research on standard CMOS gate arrays, as well as 3-5 technologies like indium phosphide, gallium arsenide, and the like. So enough technical jargon just to give you an idea that this was a real state-of-the-art type of laboratory where I was working. And I was the technical supervisor and chemical spill team coordinator, and I also had responsibility for the building since I ran it on second shift. So after second shift, it was my responsibility to make sure everything was okay and it was locked up for the night. In this building, we had 3 floors. The first floor was where the semiconductor devices were fabricated. The second floor was where all of the scientists and engineers and managers and people had their offices, and there was a cafeteria there and things of that nature. And the third floor was conspicuously empty. We all assumed the third floor was for future expansion if the technologies we were developing should come to fruition. So that's a little background on the building, what it was there for, what my role was. So every night around 11 o'clock, my second shift crew would go home for the night, and I would remain behind. Myself and my sustaining engineer, Mohammed, would stay behind. Mohammed usually worked every night on educational lesson plans and things for his children because he didn't think they were progressing fast enough in the public schools. So he was tutoring them and giving them tests and things of that nature. So he would work on that as well as wrap up his second shift report. So when the first shift engineer came in, he could look at what went on the night before. I, on the other hand, had to do a similar thing. I had to do a handoff report for the first shift technical supervisor when he came in. And I was also going to college at that time, studying electrical engineering. And that was about the time that I was going through all of the calculus courses and that. And I had put a big dry erase board up in my office, and I was working out calculus equations every night, doing my homework at work. And then I would get home sometimes 2 o'clock or so in the morning. So that's a typical night. This one particular weekend, as I recall, I really wanted to get out of work early. So when my crew left at 11 o'clock, I was hoping to get out of there by 11:30, quarter of 12. And we had a rule. It's a 2-man rule. Because there were so many dangerous and hazardous chemicals and gases in that fab, no one was allowed in the building alone. There always had to be a second person. So if I wanted to leave, that meant my engineer, Mohammed, had to leave too. So I went to his office that night, and I basically asked him, is there any way we can get out of here a little bit earlier tonight? As I recall, this incident happened in the summer of, I think it was 1988. I was about, 34, 35 years old then. And I think my wife and I had planned to go away for a long weekend. It may have been a holiday weekend. It might have been the end of the summer, or it might have been Memorial Day. I'm not sure, but we were going somewhere the next day, and I didn't want to get home too late that night. So he said, yeah, fine. He says, let's wrap things up, he said, and we'll get out of here. And I think it was around midnight when we got everything wrapped up and we're ready to go. So it's a little bit later than I wanted, but we got everything ready to go for the long weekend. And I heard someone walking around up on the third floor. Now, this is something I heard every single night, so it wasn't a surprise. Every night when I was in my office, around midnight or so, I would hear somebody walking around upstairs. I always assumed it was Mohammed, because Mohammed kept his equipment and his records upstairs on the third floor in a little cage area that was like a chain link fence, maybe 8 by 10 feet in the middle of the floor, where he locked up all the expensive equipment and things. And he had a key to it, and I had a key to it, and security had a key to it. I had a key because I had to make sure that the building was locked up and secure when I left, and he had a key so he could get in whenever he wanted. So I assumed Mohammed was the person I was hearing upstairs every night. He assumed, apparently, that it was me walking around up there, because we looked at each other, we both heard it, and I said, who else is in the building? And he said, nobody I know of. He said, I assumed every night when I heard it, it was you. I said, well, clearly somebody's in the building. Not an easy thing to do, because this building, you needed a card access to get in and out, and very few, I could probably count on one hand the number of people who had permission and authorization to enter that building after the first shift. And so I know I didn't let anybody in, and Mohammed didn't let anybody in. So somehow someone had gotten into this building. So I said, I'm supposed to call security when something like this happens. They're maybe a block down the street in Cambridge. They're going to come. They're going to make a big deal out of it. It's probably give them something to do type thing. So they're going to make a big deal out of it and ask a lot of questions. I said, I really wanted to get out of here early tonight. I said, so what do you say, Mohammed? You and I take a run upstairs and check it out. If somebody's up there, it's probably just a homeless person or a drunk or something. I'm sure the two of us can handle them. And Mohammed said, okay, I'm fine with that. So we walked down the hallway and we got on the elevator. As soon as the elevator doors closed, we both noticed a very strange, uncomfortable atmosphere in the elevator. I don't even know how to explain it. I just, one of those things where the hair stands up on your arms and that, and we didn't feel like we should be there. And Mohammed said, maybe we better call security. I said, look, we're here now. The door's going to open in a second. Let's just take a quick look and get the heck out of here. So the doors open onto a very large floor that is completely empty other than the cage area in the middle. The floors are cement. The walls are all 6-foot windows all the way around. And it's pitch black up there with the exception of a red exit sign above each doorway. There's a doorway on each end. So there was an exit sign straight across from us and one right next to us. We went in. The doors closed behind us, which was a little unsettling for some reason. And I immediately proceeded over to the panel and turned on the lights. When I did, the place lit up like a Christmas tree and, birds chirping. Everything was like happy now, and nobody was nervous anymore. Nice and bright up there. And we noticed that the cage, the door had been opened and left open. Big no-no in this building. And like I said, only a handful of us had keys. So we assumed the first shift technical supervisor had been up there and forgot to lock it. So I said, let's go check the cage area, Mohammed. You know everything that's supposed to be in there. Make sure everything's there. We'll lock it up and we'll get out of here. And he said, sure. So we walk across, and as you're walking, your footsteps kind of echo. And the first thing I realized was that it sounded exactly like what I was hearing downstairs when I heard someone walking around. And I looked at Mohammed. I said, does that sound familiar? And he said, yeah, it does. We walked into the cage. We checked everything out. There was a logbook, a 3-ring binder hanging on the fence there that had a list of everything in there. And he knew which things were really critical. And they were all there. Everything was fine. So we're getting ready to get out of there. And all of a sudden, bam, the lights go out. Not only did they go out, but even the exit signs started to crackle and blink. It was the weirdest thing. And if any of you have ever worked in Boston, you know the Boston skyline's pretty bright. And this room was surrounded with big 6-foot windows. So it's usually even natural lighting in the middle of the night. You could hold your hand up in front of you. You could see it fine. This particular night, not so much. It was really dark. And it was uncanny, the darkness. I don't know how to describe it again. I'm not good at describing this kind of stuff, I guess. And I looked at Mohammed. I said, what just happened? He said, we must have blew a breaker or something. I said, how? We're not running anything at all. The building's shut down. Other than emergency lights, there's no storm outside. We hear what sounds like footsteps coming from the back corner of the room, which is the opposite end of the room that we had entered from the elevator. And the footsteps sounded exactly like our footsteps when we walked over to the cage a few moments ago. So someone was up there. And I said to Mohammed, I said, I don't know how this is happening, but somebody's up here. And I said, there's 2 of us, and it sounds like there's only 1 of them. We gotta get something done here. And all of a sudden I hear right behind my head someone say to me in a whispering voice, get out now. And I went, holy shit. I looked at Mohammed. I said, you want to get out of here? He says, yes, but just so you know, I didn't say that. And then we both kind of panicked. So we run. We leave the gate open, and we're running for the elevator. And the footsteps are starting to pick up their pace coming towards us, like they're chasing us. Still, we don't see anything, but boy, we can hear it and we can feel it. So we get to the elevator, we press the button, and we're waiting for the doors to open, and this thing's getting closer and closer and closer. And we're looking, there's nothing there, but the footsteps are getting closer and closer and closer. The doors open up, we jump in, and we're pushing the closed door button in a panic mode, and the doors close. We go down to the 2nd floor, they open, we're back into this well-lit office area. We walk a little bit down the corridor into the mini cafeteria. None of us are saying a word to each other now. We're just both petrified. I mean, there's 2 adults that, we shouldn't be afraid of the dark, but now we don't want darkness around us at all. I put on a pot of coffee because I realized this is not going to be get out of here quick tonight. I put on a pot of coffee, and I looked at Mohammed, and we each poured a pot of coffee, and we sat down at the table, and I said, Mohammed, what do you want to do? He says, we got to call security. Something ain't right up there. So we called security. Took them maybe 10 minutes to get there. There were 2 of them. They came in, and they had that kind of Keystone Cop attitude look to them, but that was fine. We didn't tell them we had gone up there. We just said somebody's walking around upstairs, and there's not supposed to be anybody in the building tonight. They said, we'll take care of it. And they went up the stairs. We sat there talking about what had happened. Should we do anything? Should we just keep our mouth shut? We kind of agreed from now on, we're getting out before midnight, because we never heard the footsteps before midnight. It was something about the stroke of 12 that kicked this thing off. A short while later, the security guards come down. They walk into the mini calf and they said, look, you guys need to get out of here. He said, no one should go up on the third floor anymore. That's just security. Nobody else has a need to be up there. And I said, well, we have all our equipment up there. He says, we're going to need to get it out of there. That room is closed off. We don't have an occupancy permit. Nobody should be up there. And then the other cop, who was visibly shaken, said, look, he says, if I'm being honest with you, he said, what we just saw up there, I'll never be able to get over. He said, and if I'm forced to go up there again, I'll quit before I go up there. He said, so just keep your mouth shut and make off like nothing happened. We'll write up a report. You'll get a copy of it Tuesday. I'm sorry, Monday was a holiday. So Mohammed and I said, well, okay, fine. So we get out of there. We're walking out in the parking lot. Normally we just walk to our cars, but this particular night we kind of walked together. We parked fairly close to one another anyway. And we look up to the third floor, and there's someone standing in the window. When I say someone, it had the shape of a person, but it was black. There were no features. And then it kind of went, walked by the window and was gone. So whatever was up there, it was still up there, right? And so Muhammad and I said, let's make an agreement. We don't talk about this. We don't say anything about it. And we don't ever go up to that third floor again. I said, we'll come in early tomorrow while it's light. We'll clean out the cage. That'll be the last time we go up on the third floor. And we'll move it, and we're done. The next day, the senior fellow who run the organization, I mean, this is the equivalent of an executive vice president, but because of his qualifications, his technical prowess, he was considered, he had the title of senior executive fellow or something, and it was his building, his research lab, basically. He called me in his office and said, to me and Mohammed, actually, I've shut off your card access to the third floor. No one is allowed up there anymore except security. I don't want to have any problems. I said, that's fine. We just went along with it. And so from that day on, we weren't allowed up on the third floor anymore. Every now and then, if we were there after midnight, we would hear the footsteps and we would hightail it out of there. We just didn't want to deal with it. Every now and then, if we left after midnight, we'd see this figure up in the window. God only knows what it was. I don't know what happened, because shortly thereafter, we sold that building to Analog Devices and never went back there again. And I moved on to a corporate position, a much higher level position, and I didn't work out of Cambridge anymore. I was in Waltham. So that kind of ended it. So never did figure out what it was or who it was. Never did figure out why the security guard said he'd quit before he'd go up there again. And never did figure out why the senior executive fellow shut off all access to that floor. We had been using it every day prior to that. But anyway, like a lot of stories in my book, you're left kind of hanging because, like I said, there's no fiction here. These things really happen just the way I described them. And we never did find out what it was. I'd love to tell you it was some kind of demon and we had an exorcist come in and get rid of it, but no, that's how it ended. So when Analog Devices bought the building, they did whatever they had to do to deal with it, I guess. But that was a story I wanted to share with you today. My next story that I'll share with you, I've changed my mind on what it's going to be, because I figure we get away from the hauntings and get into something completely different. It's a story about when I worked in Oregon and I encountered a cryptid at 3:30 in the morning in the middle of nowhere out in the woods. And what I saw and what it did and how I managed to get out alive. That'll be my next one. So until then, if you like this sort of thing, give me a thumbs up, click the subscribe button. I'll be doing this a minimum of once a week. I'm also planning on visiting a couple of haunted houses. The Conjuring House in Harrisville, Rhode Island. There's a couple other places I want to go to. Blood Prison in Ohio. I got a whole bunch of places I want to visit. I want to do some investigation. And I'm also attending the Paracon in Connecticut the end of October with Tony Spera, who was Ed and Lorraine Warren's son-in-law. And he's bringing with him the original Annabelle doll and the Satanic Idol and some other things for us to view and to talk about. So I think I might cover that if it's okay with Tony. Tony will certainly cover it if I don't anyway. So anyway, see you next time. Adios. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.